People are using social media in their courses. Some people are introducing blogs as a way of capturing the immediacy of a particular topic. I believe last year one of the professors in communication studies began a blog when the Arab Spring became news, and the students contributed to that, and it became a very immediate bit of scholarship. So they contributed to the body of knowledge that was in existence. Some people are using Facebook. Some people are using Twitter. I mean, there are lots of innovative ways. There are some colleagues who are using MP3s to give audio feedback to their students for their papers, and the students tend to respond very favorably to this. So, I mean, there are lots of ancillary pieces of technology that people will pick up and try.
So I would say those are the three major benchmarks: is the arrival of email, then the arrival of the web, and then going mobile.
So they affected you as a student when you were a student. How do you think technology affects today's students?
I think it's good and it's bad. So the good is that there are forever these new emerging forms that students can play with. And then they can apply them to their lives in different ways. The bad is that there's so much out there that it's easy to get distracted. And I think sometimes all of us, not just students, take our eyes off the prize.
So where would you like to see technology go in an institution like university?
I think it's now the mobile age, so what I would like to see is for the university to focus more on mobile development. For some example, right now, the bookstore used book system is now on mobile device. You can actually check the price for your used book straight from an app that they provide in iTunes. I think that's a great direction that we're going to, and I hope to see a lot more of that.
No. In fact, it's even more of a challenge now, because as a student you really have many more options, right? And you're aware of there's so much more out there. We're now deluged with so much data. The problem is becoming how to sift that, how to organize it, how to navigate your way through this incredible barrage of information that we've got. Not just information, entertainment too. It's actually become difficult to resist the distractions. You've got to be really disciplined to get something done, because, you know, even sitting here right now in my office, I'm connected to a whole vast world of entertainment.
I think our students are receptive to this new technology.
I think there's a mistrust, is I guess what I'm saying. Among some students, they think that this is homogenizing, you know, it puts a slick surface on everything. The students who are kind of born digital, you know, they're digital natives, they kind of would be more apt to believe everything they see. So in other words, they would perhaps be less critical of what they're seeing.
Really?
You know, wondering if it's being homogenized, wondering if what kind of changes the mediated image might be making in the surface. You know, they seem to be more accepting of what they see sort of at face value.
Computers are great in lots of different ways, but there's an important thing that happens with them is the fact that there's this, what I would kind of call this homogenization of meaning, which happens with them.
See, and Google's a great example. You can get information, no problem. But what's the value of the information? How do you integrate that information? What's the history of that knowledge base?
And is it going to stay with you if it's so easily accessible?
Yeah.
The Iraq War, and I have to say, you know, we have to be careful about the information we get from Wikipedia about the Iraq War, because it's an ongoing hot political issue, and you don't know the slant of the person writing the entry. But, you know, if I teach something in the 19th century, a 19th century author, there's not a lot of controversy about that author, and the information on Wikipedia is as good as any kind of encyclopedia you get.
Is there any technology that kind of hinders your education?
I feel like a lot of times people aren't getting the right information, because anybody can put information on the internet, or anybody can make a video about a certain topic, so you really have to do your background search, do your research, and find out what's factual and what's just kind of mass-produced garbage.
What is the meaning of that tool? So the medium is the message kind of thing, right? There's inherent content within the use of any kind of form or medium or discipline. Is it conducive to teaching and learning?
First and foremost, I think our colleagues have to start thinking about the pedagogy that lies behind the technology. I've always said that a fool with a tool is still a fool. So you can have the latest and greatest technology, the biggest hard drive, the fastest processor, but if you're not using it in an appropriate fashion, if you're not using it to engage students, then you've got a problem. I think you'll have a technologically gee whiz course, but will it engage students? I would like to see faculty invest more time in thinking about their pedagogy. It doesn't cost money. It just means thinking about how am I going to integrate this into my course. Focus on your teaching, on your learning outcomes, and then add the technology to support it.
How do you deal with creativity and critical thinking in your classroom?
I like that question because it's the two sides of the coin. So we spend a lot of time, especially in the humanities, talking about critical thinking. And essentially, the movement there is the breaking down of something. And the idea is that Shakespeare, for instance, has created this incredible piece of art. And your job is to critique it and criticize it and break it down. And in the process, you're developing pathways of thinking, ways of understanding. That's important, and clearly we spend the rest of our lives thinking critically, or we should be spending the rest of our lives thinking critically. And so we need to invest our technologies and the teaching of the use of those with critical thinking as well. The other side is the creativity, and we've done less of that in the humanities traditionally in the last, let's say, 50 years or so. But that's the building up, the creation of something by the student. And that's where I think the technologies get really exciting, because we have these new environments. They allow you to do different things than you could do with the old environments or old tools. And in the process of using those, you gain new insights.
How would you like to see some of these technologies instituted within the rest of the university?
You know, the question I keep coming back to is, what is the best tool for any given job? As an artist and as a professor, right? And that my art tends to be quite idea-driven, and then I actually find the tool that complements that idea the best. And sometimes I have to teach myself how to use that tool because I've never used it before, or take courses or whatever.
I don't think technology has helped at all.
Oh, really?
I think technology is a useful tool to get students to think that they're being current and it's brand new. But I think that the things that reach our students are not technology or technologically driven.
It's really about being idea-driven and finding a medium that suits the idea.
Do you find that technology helps convey these messages to the students when you teach?
Technology is ubiquitous in the university environment, and it's completely normal as chalk was to other generations. Digital technology is actually a bit of a hindrance to education, because I'm dealing in some cases with a generation that's never been unplugged. People have grown up with chatting and instant messaging and social networks, and they've never actually been taken off of that connection.
I think that students are in a position right now where students actually don't even know what is their own idea these days, because I think they're consuming so much information online that I'm not even sure how often they can imagine how to synthesize that information with something that is their own original concept.
There's a lot to be said about being in the moment, and that's where teaching and learning occurs. But also looking at the really positive things within that, which is agency, which is community, which is discourse. And I guess for me, those are always the central aspects of where art practice, and by extension, teaching about art practice, really lives. the technology is part of the realization of it.
In undergraduate education, we need to find the sweet spot between giving you enough technology so that when you emerge from the university, you're ready to easily transition into real world life, without giving you too much technology that might distract you or end up focusing your attentions on areas that in the long term aren't worth your while.
How have these new technologies, YouTube and the accessibility, affected your work?
Everybody's kind of a bit of an amateur these days with a lot of different digital media. It seems like a lot of professionals, whether it's in graphic design or in photo or video or whatnot, are, talk about this all the time. The fact that because people have the tools, they sometimes maybe believe that they are professionals in how to use them, which is not at all the case. And that's not a judgment, that's an observation.
Sure, there is that. I mean, you get comfortable with something, and suddenly it's gone. It's a real pain having to relearn things over and over again. So this is a downside to technology, yeah. Particularly the user interfaces and things becoming obsolete. I've got a closet at home full of storage media that were the hot thing for a while, and then were obsolete. So I started out with floppy disks, and then I went to zip drives. Then I was putting stuff on CDs, and then flash drives came along, and now I've got Dropbox, so I have nothing.
How important is the human side of education?
I see that as being the only side of education. It's the human side that matters, and the technology is merely, on the one hand, a medium, and on the other hand, it's never really transparent, right? It takes our knowledges and experiences in different directions, and we make other things out of it too.
It's something that we all rely on, though. If it goes down, what happens, right? What's your backup plan? Because that's what happens with alt media. It falls apart. Things become obsolete. It's kind of Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong.
Can that medium be improved for future students?
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be a day when I say, do you remember way back in that year where we carried huge computing objects around? How absurd was that? Now it's implanted in my eye.
Have, like a lot of people, I've got 2 PCs and 3 netbooks, and so I'm constantly moving between machines for various reasons, and inevitably you'd be in one machine and there'd be a file on the other one, and with Dropbox I just dump it in the cloud, and it's there whenever I want it. So that's making my life much simpler. But of course the technology created the problem. When netbooks came out, I was thrilled because I could just carry this thing around and use it wherever. But then I had the problem of, I create something on a netbook and go back to my PC, I have to synchronize them.
I have to say technology is interface through which almost everything I do is done, and it's really tedious.
Oh, really?
I find the real treat now is to do things that don't require technology.
Oh, wow.
It's really, it's become sort of a novelty.
What about technology in the future? How it can maybe help the school? Virtual seminars or some kind of better communication with the students and the professors?
Changing the way we do things is in video conferencing. I see the possibility of students being able to attend by video conference. Students from multiple places, so for instance students at Ryerson and Brock attending the same course. I think it would be great if all lectures were videotaped, so that students could access those after the fact.
With all the tools at our disposal, I'm beginning to wonder how much we really need traditional face-to-face classes so much. And there's a lot of stuff we could be doing, through the web, through collaborative software. I often teach classes in Second Life. They find it liberating, a lot of them, because when you're interacting through an avatar, they feel much freer to express their opinions. They're less inhibited online than they are when they're face-to-face with their peers. there's a downside to it in they talk to me in ways they wouldn't talk to me face to face, and I have to make allowances for the medium.
Do you think something like having digital lectures or digital seminars would be positive for the future?
Well, I don't really know what that means. I mean, I remember walking into the first mass lecture I ever saw. I was in my undergrad, and it was a science lecture, and there was 300 students watching a video of a talking head. And I just started laughing. I was like, "What, are you stupid?" And I dropped out and took other science classes with smaller teacher-to-student ratios.
I mean more of the lines of having that available to you at home. So the lectures and seminars being filmed or even communicate through the computer.
Not unless it's actually true Web 2.0, right? What I see of Web 2.0, the idea that it's an interactive, flexible system, I haven't really seen completely manifested, except for in the very first iteration of the web, when it was first invented, when it actually was completely open, anyone could interact in any way that wasn't prescribed. So when I see platforms that actually quite clearly and closely prescribe an activity, like Facebook, what can I post? I don't really see where there's agency for the user in that. If the medium already defines what the nature of the interaction is.
But what do you think personally would be useful in the long term? Have we changed the institution of university through technology?
What we need to do is we need to figure out what are we really trying to teach you. And then once we've isolated those, we can say, well, what technologies support the teaching of what we're trying to get across. And we can flip that and say, you know, what do students really need to learn? Because it's not just about the teaching, that's a professor out kind of modality. You know, what do the students coming in really need to take from the university experience? And then, okay, well, what technologies are going to support them taking it out? And I think that's the ultimate goal. I think if we walk in and we say, well, you know, this course should be about X, Y, or Z. It should be about Unity, or it should be about, you know, Facebook, or it should be about something else. We've missed the point, which is figuring out what's really important for students to learn and for the university to spend its time on.
I think it's probably more interesting the ways that students have learned to glitch cameras since they were babies than some way that I might interact with technology. So I think, again, it's about the content side of dialogue, where the students are actually generating the context for their work. And they will, right? Mm-hmm. Especially as art students, they're creating the future of whatever that discourse and dialogue is.
So I think it's patience, I think it's trusting your students, and I think it's understanding that together, students, professors, learners, teachers, we all form one community. So the technology is nice to have, nice to support all of that, but the core was and remains the people.
What I found is that by going simpler, things tend to be more effective. So there are a variety of reasons for this. The first is that not all students come in with a high degree of ability using some of these technologies. So if I say, well, here's the baseline, you have to use the wiki and you have to learn a little bit of coding so that you can use it appropriately, then that provides an opportunity for students to start to communicate with each other online. Then if I say, well, you need to create a blog, now they're learning other things, including a little bit of coding there. And then if I say, okay, well, now it's time for you to build a computer tool, the students can decide what it is that's really important for them, whether it's an issue or question in literature or history or art, and then they can decide on the appropriate tool that will support their creation or deconstruction, their creation of critical thinking around this set of content.
I do think that students are interested definitely in using a bunch of different kinds of technologies, and I think that it does make sense to explore the possibilities in how one can deliver different lectures or courses or whatnot to complement the teaching process and the learning process, but there needs to be really, really, really strong critical thinking in how that will successfully help or aid the whole process of teaching and learning.